welcome to Relish Books. Today I'm talking about one of my favorite authors, Kate DiCamillo, and her books. She is a contemporary author, which is rare and exciting for me because most of my favorite authors are dead authors, so it's really nice to have a few favorites who are still producing new things. That's always very exciting when one of her new books comes out. And so I'm just going to go through and talk about all of her published works just in their order of release dates and just say a couple things about each one and why they're my favorites. And I really think that there's so much to be gained by reading children's books because there's a lot of value to them. They have their own style a lot of the time. They're not written in the same way as what's considered adult fiction, and sometimes it's honestly better and there's more value to them than a lot of adult stuff. So I love reading good children's books. Like all books, there's a vast amount of garbage in the genre, but there are some gems as well. So just going through each one really fast. First one, her debut novel, Because of Winn-Dixie, published in 2001. This is one of her most well-known books. And it's interesting because when you look at all of her work, it's kind of the different one to me, at least of the ones that I really love. It has a very different voice. Most of the time, Kate DiCamillo has a very distinct sound to her writing and a very distinct turn of humor, I guess you could say. And this one doesn't really have that. It's different. And I think it's because it's her only book, I think, that's written in the first person. And so Opal has a very distinct voice of her own. And it's just about this 10-year-old girl taking in this dog who changes her whole life, helps her make all these new friends. It's a great cast of characters. Again, I think a really, really good debut novel. So very impressive. I love that one. Her next feels more like her debut novel, The Tiger Rising. It's not very good. It's pretty amateur. The plot has a lot of just underdeveloped. There's not a lot to it. She was messing around with some ideas that I feel like just didn't work very well. None of the characters are memorable. The story isn't that memorable. It's just kind of falls flat, especially after such a good beginning that she had. So this is definitely her weakest for me. I don't really like it. The next is Tale of Despereaux, which for whatever reason is the only one of hers that I don't own. I just missed collecting that one at some point. I guess just since my parents had it, I haven't gotten my own copy yet, but I do like it. I think it's probably that and Winn-Dixie are probably her best well-known. And I like a lot of things about it. I think some of the ideas that she had are really beautiful. It has some of the best isolated quotations of any of her books. The whole concept of storytelling and the idea that telling stories makes light in a dark world just has some of the most beautiful quotes about that that I've ever read. It's really good in that way, but the characters don't really work for me. This mouse who's in love with a princess, and then there's the rat, and there's the serving girl. The characters did not work well together, I felt like. It didn't work in a plot. It didn't work as a whole for me. I know a lot of people love it. It's just not my favorite as far as that goes because usually her characters are really good. And so, yeah, has some great stuff. It's worth reading, but it's not my favorite. I do need to get it to add to my collection though because I need to have them all. Then there is The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane, and I feel like if you haven't read any Kate DiCamillo books, this is a great place to start. It is a beautiful story, very simply told. It's not a terribly original plot line, but she tells it in a fresh and unique way. It's full of great characters. It's very sad, but it's sad in a beautiful way. Just about this very full of it China rabbit and his adventures. And that might not sound great, but I promise it is really, really great. So I love that one. Definitely recommend it. Then there's The Magician's Elephant. This book has some of the best ideas for a story that I have found anywhere. The idea of this magician who was intending to conjure a bouquet of lilies and accidentally makes an elephant fall through the roof. Wonderful idea. And then there's also this image of like this little girl who's in an orphanage dreaming of an elephant coming to save her. There are these crystallized moments almost that sound so good and so exciting. I was all pumped up to read the book, and it's a bit of a disappointment just because it's too short. It's not developed enough. There's a lot of great things about it. The concepts are amazing, but she just didn't go the distance. It needed to be longer. It needed to have more to it. It needed to be more developed. So that's a disappointment, especially since the ideas were so great. If they hadn't been so great, it wouldn't be so disappointing. So yeah, I really feel like that could have been one of the best children's books ever written if she had just put a little more into it. Then there is my favorite, Flora and Ulysses. She just hit the mark perfectly here. This one, she really goes to the full extent of her quirky humor up to this point. It's full of dry wit and sarcasm. It's my absolute favorite. I don't know, it might just be me. It might just be a special thing where it like gives me exactly what I'm looking for. But I love it. I love the characters. Pretty much all of them. She just, for what it is, it's one of the most perfectly executed and balanced books I've ever read. I go back to it over and over and over. Another unique thing about it is that it is partly a comic book. The artist, K.G. Campbell, partly tells the story through his art, and it's really, really good. So that's just kind of different, but also just the story. It's just my favorite. I made a top 10 books of all time video the other day, and this one's on there, and it's very near the top of that list. I can't even really explain why. It might seem like an odd choice, but I don't know. I just love this book. Then there is Remy Nightingale, and this one I love. I can't love it quite as much as Flora and Ulysses, but it's definitely next for me of her books. I feel like coming into here, starting with Flora and Ulysses, and then going on for the next few books, is Kate DiCamillo's golden age. You know, everybody kind of hits their peak, and I think she really did here. This book is also perfectly written, I feel like, for what it is. It's even weirder in some ways. I actually had my husband read Edward Tulane and Flora and Ulysses and Remy Nightingale. This was his least favorite. I should have known. It is like some pretty wonky stuff, but it just really appeals to me. It works for me perfectly. I love her characters. The three girls are such a great combination of different personalities. It's really just a story about friendship. Kind of the friendship of these three girls over a summer and their adventures. And I love that one. I read it over and over as well. I almost said it's even better written than Flora and Ulysses, but I can't quite say that. But it is also pretty much perfectly executed for the concepts that she had. Really, really great. I love it. And then she did something that she had never done before, where she went on to do more books about some of the same characters. She had only ever done standalones before. And so Louisiana's Way Home is about one of the characters in Remy Nightingale. She ended up doing a book each on all three of the girls. And I was a little nervous about this. I was nervous and excited. I was nervous about what she was going to do because Louisiana is such a singular, like, weird, super fun character. But I liked her as Remy's friend. I wasn't sure how I felt about giving her her own book because I was afraid that it would either have to be like too wild or they would make it too serious or she would make it too serious and Louisiana would lose some of her like wonky charm. And a little bit of that happened. At first I wasn't sure. The first read through I wasn't quite sure how I felt about the book. it did kind of go into some things that I really wanted to be left alone in Remy Nightingale. But at the same time, I kind of understand. And it is, if you can kind of separate it from Remy Nightingale a little bit, it is a beautiful book. I love the story. There are some things, it doesn't have the perfection of Flora and Remy. There are some flaws in the plot, I feel like, but it has enough goodness. There's a lot of heartwarming stuff. It has enough goodness to make up for it, I feel like, and still be a really good book on its own. And then Beverly right here. And if I felt like Louisiana should have been left alone, Beverly really needed to be left alone. This book has some good things about it. It's worth reading. But I feel like, so Kate DiCamillo wrote Remy, and then she said that she felt like Louisiana was really wanting to be written about more. And I understand that with her character. And then I feel like, I don't know about this, but I feel like since she wrote Louisiana, she was like, well, it's the three girls, the three rancheros. I have to write a Beverly book or she'll be left out. So I almost feel like she wrote it just to write it because she felt like she should, like, give Beverly her own story. And so it's not very good. It really suffers from that. It's not. There's some nice things in it, some good concepts, some good moments, but it's really not a very good book. And it's not, Beverly should have been left alone, and it doesn't really add anything. I don't know. That was definitely a disappointment. And I felt like she just felt like she had to do it, and it doesn't have the heart that the other ones do. And then I think Flora, Remy, and Louisiana's books are kind of Kate DiCamillo's golden age. And then she kind of started to go downhill a little bit, which makes me very, very sad to say. But the Theatric Prophecy, I was so excited about this. Looks really neat. I was a little bit like, some of the concepts, I'm a little unsure, but I trusted her as an author. So this one I feel like suffers from some of the same things that The Magician's Elephant does. There are some good concepts, but they're just not developed enough. It was like she had these ideas and didn't quite know what to do with them. It's definitely worth reading. It's still good, but it does not have the goodness that the other ones do. She'll like have these characters that seem so important and so special, and then they just come to nothing. And you're like, it feels like she's trying to work out where she's going with them as she's writing and just never quite gets there. So that's disappointing. I still really liked it, but yeah, it was a disappointment. And then she came out with her most recent, that was just this last year, The Puppets of Spellhorst, and I think this is going to be in kind of a series. I don't know if it's going to be about the same characters or if it's just these like original fairy tales series that she's doing. It's called a Rendy Tale, but it's very, very short. I almost feel like, well, her other books are probably, even though I hate putting things in a category, sometimes you kind of have to. The others of her books are probably more middle grade. I feel like she maybe dropped a couple of years here. Maybe it's supposed to be for a little bit of a younger audience. I didn't care for it. It is still well written, but it feels like she's just taking her simple style a little too far. Like she's just embracing it even more. There are good things about it. The end is pretty good, but it's so basic. It's just a little too short, a little too simple. It kind of has the feel of like a child's picture book, which is fine, just not quite what I was hoping for. So maybe she's kind of starting like a bit of a different trend. She does have several series for very young readers, so maybe she's kind of trying to do like an in-between thing. And I don't like those books of hers. There's the Mercy Watson series, and there's another series. and they very much have her humor, but so my biggest problem with those is that the illustrations in Mercy Watson are horrific. That illustrator, that like over the top, like purposely like gross looking style, I hate. If you're gonna do a children's picture book, the pictures are just as important, maybe even more important than the words. It really tells the story. It really influences the imagination of your reader, of the children reading it, and they're gross. Those pictures are horrifying. Like, I've tried to read some of them just to see what they're like, and the words aren't the issue. It's the pictures. I mean, the stories are odd too, but the pictures are just horrendous. She needs to fire that illustrator and get somebody else. It kind of lowers my opinion of her a tiny bit to think that maybe she likes those illustrations, but her other books have beautiful illustrations, like Flora and Ulysses. That illustrator is amazing. So I don't know what's up with that, but just saying, I don't like her young children's series, but when it comes to this little bit older stuff, she is one of my absolute favorites. One of the greatest writers of all time, in my opinion, just because of the way that she measures language, the way that she chooses each word. It's like these perfect, clear tones. When she really gets it right, when she really wrote like those 3 really good ones, it's like each word is just the perfect choice, and it can seem so simple. People read her books and be like, well, they're a little simple for me. And it's like, to write that clearly with that perfect word choice is not simple. That is difficult to do. It doesn't sound complicated, and that's like a complicated thing in itself. But yeah, just a great storyteller. I think she's super funny. And even though they're funny, like Flora and Ulysses and Remy Nightingale, had a lot of depth for me too, and really touched me in a lot of ways. So anyway, that's some thoughts on Kate DiCamillo. I really hope that her great writing days are not over and that she kind of goes back up after this little valley, but we'll see. Even if her books Forever After are not as great, she had some really, really amazing ones. So anyway, that's my thoughts on her and her books, and I'll see you next time. Bye.